I almost always start with someone's story in this, someplace in their childhood, right? Some kind of story that if I'm looking to hire an interior designer, like what is it about her that's going to compel me to hire her? And I think that in this section, the about section, is where so many sales happen, where so many people make that decision to work with somebody, right? As a young child in Poland, Edita's strong-willed and creative personality found an outlet in art. She ends up going on into an art competition that she won. The judges didn't think that she was, old enough to win it. And that was kind of like the opening story for her. And I just thought it was so endearing and so special that, this bio is not long, but it's punchy. So, so yeah, in terms of process, it's working with me is definitely different. Because I think that because I've worked at levels with, say, some of these bigger, organizations like the University of Chicago, where, the process of working is, based on style guides. It's very stringent. There's a very, very clear process for developing copy and developing the artwork and then going through review processes that, in that type of capacity, you never give the client something unless it's like 99% done. And I feel like a lot of times one of the problems with particularly branding with solopreneurs or very small businesses is there's a lot of back and forth. Like there tends to be, here's a logo, here's 15 versions, pick one, and then I'll revise it. And I don't work that way, because actually what I learned from some of the best designers is there really is usually like one really truly like great design that is just waiting to be unearthed. And so this is a piece that I did for the Commerce Bank of Oregon. They were doing an advertisement in a ballet booklet. And so one of their core values happens to be around leadership. So I pulled that out and I defined it. And then we just used a really, really beautiful, elegant picture to work this campaign. So I'm a big fan of using photography. Here's an example of something I did where I created a product line. So having grown up in the beauty business, I have designed a lot of packaging. And of course, I have experience selling into large organizations. So I've got an eye for like the sales, like the sales page, or what's gonna, these, whatever, comparing ours to theirs. Just all really fun stuff. I also, if Christine, are you cool if I show what I did for you?
She just messaged me. Yes, she is.
Great. All right. Let's see here. Are you guys working behind the scenes there?
Absolutely, of course.
The chat box.
The chat box. Oh yeah. Okay, good. All right. Let me adjust my share preferences here. There we go. Oh, great. Thanks, Christine. I didn't even see that. It was in my screen mode. I couldn't see the chat. All right. So Christine and I really connected from the get-go. And Christine, feel free to unmute yourself and chime in at any time. But what was it that made you decide to work with me? What was that for you?
There was nothing I could describe. I just sort of thought you were really intriguing and had a unique sort of viewpoint. I mean, besides that, it was just, I think we were supposed to meet.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yeah. In our first conversation, so this is actually a banner that I created for Christine for her Facebook group and her Facebook business page. And that's like where people are going, right? They go to your Facebook page to check you out, do a little bit of research. Maybe they end up on your website, but people spend an inordinate amount of time in their feeds, scrolling and doing their research there. So this has become a bigger part of my offering for solopreneurs, is going in and refreshing their banners, design assets for social media. So what we do is we kick off with a discovery call. And usually that's around an hour, hour and a half. It depends, sometimes we chat longer, just getting to know each other. So it's very satisfying work for me because I love getting to know people. So I would just listen to someone's life story anyway without getting paid for it. And it's an extra bonus if I get to work with them. But what I learned about Christine was her background in music, and that from a very early age, she was basically a musical prodigy. She played violin with some of the best artists in the world. And having touched in with that part of herself now as a real strength is something that I wanted to elevate. And so we use in here, when we were coming up with the headline for this banner, Live Your Highest Harmony, it's like, okay, let's take this language around music and let's build on it. Let's make it unique and personal to Christine, because that is the part of what she, when she's working with her clients, that's part of what she's giving them is her own experiences in life. Go ahead.
Let me
Leslie.
ask you a quick question about this. Was Christine at this point Christine, were you talking about, this is about the process of evolving the imagery to match the goal, and is the client clear on the goal? So were you talking about doing something related to music at this point, Christine? Or using the metaphor of music for something else?
Metaphor of music with something else. So not with music, that may come in a bit. What we really honed down to is that I was trying to reach a broader helping sort of area. And since I was only a musician most of my life, there was a lot of fear around, I have no business doing this, right? I have no history. I can't really do this. So Dee and I started talking, and Dee was an amazing basketball player and could have gone into that professional playing. And so we started talking about the similarities between being, 5 or however, and only being single-minded about one thing. And the habits we started seeing this pattern of being an overachiever at a young age, not having options.
Right.
The characteristics and the fear that go around that. So she really helped me go deep into this niche of overachievers, child prodigies, and that they have a really hard time making decisions, spreading out. So when I got divorced at 40, I had no idea what to do. Mm-hmm. But going to this niche is just me describing what I've gone through in the past, 18 years from that point at 40, of how do I make a decision that's not in music? How do I know what's right for me? How do I branch into something else, but take my history and my learning with me?
So that becomes part of what you're going to be coaching.
Yeah, and those would be those people who would respond better to me because I done the process. And so now I no longer feel inauthentic by saying I have no business teaching this, because I lived it and I went through it myself and how I overcame it.
Okay.
Right.
Great.
Yeah, because I think that, thank you, Christine. That's really good. Because I think that when we are in like coaching, for instance, there's or social workers or psychology, like I often see these laundry lists of like, this is what I can help people with, but there's no way to differentiate when there's just a really long list of like services or, common things so like really helping Christine narrow down and go more niche is what's going to help her actually expand and be very fluid, because overachievers, I mean, it all is, if that's kind of the core audience, then it just kind of trickles out from there.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was really a good example of that. And I think that that's really kind of, at this point for me, working with individuals, I think that's really where what I'm looking to help with is where it's just differentiating, being open with one's gifts, natural gifts, and also what they've worked to hone, and bring that to a place where it's relatable to the people who they can really help with it.
So what I really like about what you have described is that you managed to align the language and the imagery in this visual presentation for Facebook, this banner, with the themes that Christine is focusing on. So how does that work when you're talking about a product? Like one of our members here, Deb Mazzaferro, is very experienced in the specialty foods industry. So she's dealing with, you know, companies starting and building up, getting their products to, you know, anyway.
Yeah.
How do you do that process with a product, for example? And all of you listening, please be thinking about, do you have any questions about your own identity, your own presentation, your own branding that you can bring into the conversation? So how do you do that with a product?
Well, so when you're developing a product, I think that it's a little less personal, except for when you start marketing, when you start. Okay, so if it's a founder-owned company, I think that the founder story is critical. Again, like, why is this founder connected to this brand? So I'll pull up the one that my parents' company owns. This is a brand called Deep Steep. It's in about 500 stores worldwide. It's been around for about 15 years. So it's not different than any other, like at face value, than any other retail product brand, except, you know, we've got this messaging about the self-care routine, about elevating that self-care routine. And then, you know, we have an About Us page that talks about the founders. There's mom and dad. And we actually have linked it. So this is their story. We believe, and I wrote this, so that's my words, but, you know, their story, our story. We believe that self-care is more than a trend, it's a movement. So we start with a belief statement. You know, what do you believe? And, you know, there's a gazillion different body care brands that probably are just as clean as this brand, but customers are buying the belief behind it, because that's what instills trust, that they're going to buy a product that works or is what they expect it to be, or what it's being marketed as. And then we have values. These are our values. It's a little more corporate, you know, sustainability, diversity, inclusion. And then Deep Steep is owned and operated by Royal Labs. So this actually links out, you know, in events where a brand is owned by another company or by an individual who has their own personal page or blog. I love linking out to it so people can kind of, like, the investigators and us can kind of continue digging deep into it. And if you were to dig into it, then you get deeper into who are these people, who's this couple, how did they get started, and you have the whole story and timeline of existence. Now, you could do that on any given page if you want to. It just happens to be that the owners of this brand are also the manufacturers and the formulators of many other brands, so it kind of links to another page. When creating the packaging for a product line, I mean, it's really no different than just, you know, thinking, okay, how do I want this? Like, what are the most special things about this brand? It's clean. We want it to feel elevated. We're trying to attract a certain customer. And then we try to capture that in photography and in the packaging itself. And then the product development process is a whole other thing that could be an entire other conversation. Just how does one even plan out a product line is a whole other exercise. Yeah,
that's really interesting. Thank you. I noticed that sometimes if I'm looking at a group of products that do the same thing on the shelf, the colors or the fonts or the design of the labels will steer me towards or away from something. So
yeah,
I'm realizing how influential what you're saying about the look and the design and the whole
oh
thing
yeah,
really
it makes a ton of difference.
Yeah, it really
Well, I mean,
that's the message of the product. Well,
and I think that the bigger brands can be really great guides for this. Like, when I was designing these pages, I was thinking about Crate and Barrel. I was thinking, where else is my customer shopping? What do they have in their home? What kind of, because these products, they live in the shower that has the gorgeous tile that you took 3 months to select. They're sitting in the guest room sink, where your guests are going and they're experiencing your home. So yeah, I mean, that does play a big role in all of this. And so what I do is I work with photographers, and we do these photo sessions where we do flat lays. These are flat lays where the aspect ratio is looking just straight down on the label in natural lighting. And it just gives that, environment, that lifestyle feel. So I think that with product brands in particular, if you can capture a lifestyle, all of a sudden it's like, oh, this must be a big, important brand, when in fact it may not be. Not to say this one isn't, but that's the effect that you can achieve with really smart branding.
So if you don't mind, I want to swing back to
Sure.
Personal branding. What's this, Chasing Dragonflies?
Oh, this is just one I had open too. This is another client who's starting a nonprofit. And she had the name Chasing Dragonflies already. It's for youth suicide awareness and prevention. So she's writing a bunch of grants right now, and wanted to get a website up quickly. So this is her, this is Heather. And she did a video, we popped it in, and we just created this 1-page website in about a week. So I designed the mock-up of the design in an afternoon. And then I have a web developer that I work with who does all of the technical stuff for me. And I work with him. I usually have, like, on the right side of my screen, like a Skype up, and we just chat all day long. and I shoot directions at him for how I want something to be nudged or to operate. And so right now, this page, because it's just for the grants, so when she submits the grants, it shows what this organization is going to be doing. And then if you click on anything, it just goes right down to the contact form. So without having to be like, oh, our website's going to be done in 3 months or 6 months or whatever, and it's just a parked page, missing opportunities. One thing that I often do is just create 1-pagers for people where they can have what looks to be a really solid start to their brand without having that time lag. So that's that one.
So in this case, the imagery is dragonflies. So was that something that this person wanted specifically? Like, she liked dragonflies? Would it have worked?
Yeah, she has a personal story with it. Yeah, it's kind of I think there's the dragonfly, I'm probably saying this wrong, but the dragonfly represents transformation, and they're also very delicate.
Okay.
And if you look in this image here, I just grabbed this from a website called Pexels that I love to use, Pexels, free, really great elevated imagery. But that's essentially, that's the essence of this brand, is that, these little dragonflies are like children or like teens, and they can actually be very strong. But there's a period at which they really need protection. And so she had already come up with the name, and I wasn't sure what it meant. And I was like, Chasing Dragonflies, like, and she was like, should I change the name? I've already filed the nonprofit. And I was like, no, we can work with that. Like, I think that's the other thing about branding too, is like, it doesn't all have to be like ripping everything down to the studs. Like, if it's meaningful, we can craft around it. And like, think of Nike. Like, Nike has absolutely no meaning in the word other than the, years and years and years of branding and marketing that they've done to create an essence of meaning around it. So I came up with this tagline, help them find their wings. And this is a website geared toward educators and healthcare providers and caregivers to learn how to identify and help prevent teen suicide, youth suicide.
So that's really interesting, because if this is for getting grants, I can see where help them find their wings immediately ties in the image of why the dragonfly, which is great, in a very clear,
that's right,
simple way. And I can also see from what you're talking about that when you have a more developed website or you go into more depth in the materials, you would probably use the imagery of transformation and that they're delicate. The little story you just told about what dragonflies need, because that's the perfect image for teens who are at risk for suicide. So that to me is an example of what you talked about earlier about finding the personal story about the background of why this exists and weaving it in. So that's
right.
That makes it's like clicking.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
And some of the coaching that I did with her was just around reminding like who are the people that are going to be engaging with your organization. It's not the teens. So we had to do a careful balance of like, you know, like bright blocks of colors mixed with grounding earth tones, more like mature colors. And also the hands holding the dragonfly was just an amazing thing to come across, especially as a free stock photo. Was like, that's the caregiver, like that's the person who's going to be helping them. And it's just a very, very, it came together so well there where it's fun, it feels youthful, but it is also, it's grown up, it's adult, and it's professional. Like there's not a ton to it. Like if you look at just the, like what is on this website, it's like less is more. And there she is in her video. So that's that.
Jean Jokowitz is asking the image site you mentioned. She's
I'll go to it right now. It's called
PEXLS.com. It's a great site, like Unsplash.
This is where we got Leslie's picture for her emotional mastery, which I've actually seen in other places, which is so cool. Actually, Christine as well. We found yours here as well. So oftentimes, there's like a, you know, you can do mountains, and then all of a sudden these gorgeous photos come up of all sorts of mountains, and they're all very, very well done.
I've mentioned in this group a while back that I was doing some rebranding and especially imagery. And I reluctantly gave up my avatar of the rubber duck with the hula skirt at long last. I don't know how many years. So I'm finally using my photo. But as part of the rebranding, although I may go back to the rubber duck in the hula skirt someday, you never know. But it was an interesting process of trying to find the right tones and colors, and I was still searching for an umbrella term for what I'm doing. So Pexels was very helpful there too. Does anybody have any questions about your own situation? Like, do you want to brainstorm at all? Like, how are you thinking? How would you make yourself more distinctive than you are? Or are you having trouble describing what it is you do, even though you know what you do? Anybody have any questions at all?
There's a great question on the chat from Mona.
Oh, I didn't see.
What if you have started and are struggling with your business and you have made the big mistake about not giving a conscientious thought to your brand and you are trying to bring a new service to market? How do you start to transition? Oh, being brand centered with your messaging. Okay. Mona, do you have a website that we can look at or something? Type it in. Type it in if you have it. You're muted or someone's muted.
Put us back in. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Great. There you are. Okay.
So I'm writing it in the chat.
Yeah. And while you're doing that,
Actionomics is my website. It's
Okay.
You'll get it from that.
Is it actionomics.com?
Yes.
Actionomics.
Thanks for pointing that out, Deb. I hadn't seen that. It had scrolled up already.
Okay. So healthy moving for healthy living. Okay. There you are. Okay. So the first thing so your question specifically is if you have a struggling with your business and you made a big, not giving a conscious. Okay. Well, the good news is that you already have, you've got a functional, this is what WordPress is, I'm guessing.
Yes.
Great. WordPress is super easy to work with. Did it come with this imagery already? Was this kind of built in, or did you have that?
We had to search it.
Okay.
Locate.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I would say is, and who's your audience?
Well, I've had a hard time. They're either dancers. It was anybody. I'm a movement therapist.
Is that your background, is dance?
my background is dance, but then I had a
Okay.
career-ending injury that changed everything because
Yeah.
I moved into the world of movement.
Cool.
And I
love
studied
that.
several systems of movement analysis and documentation for several years and taught. It is entirely different mindset and percept. Even though
Yeah.
I danced with ABT and I was an elite dancer, I knew nothing about movement when I was dancing. And so then, so I got really interested in the field of movement and carried it on because it didn't answer all the questions I entered that field with, and ultimately ended up doing a lot of research and created a method that I have patented, and that is actionomics. And it's a very special mind-body engagement that teaches
Well,
you.
okay.
So that's but it doesn't really translate, and it's really hard to get into my target market because I'm not in the world of dance and the world of athletes. I can help them using my patent, but I'm not one of them anymore because I'm in the field of movement. And then
I wonder if that would be if I mean, one thing that I would do if we were having a discovery call, what I would is I would go into that more. Like, is your target audience narrow enough? Like, when I go on this website and then I see you, I say, oh, she's like this seasoned, like she knows what's up. But when I see up here, it feels like any other, like this site could be selling me foam rollers, or it could be selling me gym equipment, or I think that maybe it's tailored toward like, it feels kind of like just not very personal. And this, I think, goes back to that piece of like just bringing more of the personal forward. And you got really excited in your voice when you talked about, I have this patented thing and I didn't know when I was a dancer about all this stuff. And now I know, and I've packaged it, and now I can help so many people. So that would be the place where we would start our conversation is, who are these people and why you? And I would put that right at the front, right here at the top half of your website is the most powerful, bold statement about you and what you learned. Like, I didn't know, as a professional dancer, I didn't know how to move until it was too late. Don't let it be too late for you. Like, you could be bold like that if that's your personality, if that's kind of how you are.
It is.
Right? It grabs the attention.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah. So, and I would just like, there's a little too many stock, like the reason why I love Pexels, we'll go back, just take a side by side here. All right. So, all right. So, actionomics therapy, any of this stuff might be like, let's see, let's just go tennis. I would choose maybe something like this. See this photo right here? To me, it's less about selling me what someone looks like. And instead, it's allowing me to relate to the activity. Like, I want to play, clay courts. Oof. That's how I busted my knee open. Or man, I'd sure love to get back to that. But it doesn't tell me that I have to necessarily be a young woman playing a sport. Like, I think that there's nuance in that as well, like being more broad. But yeah, Pexels offers that artistic flair, or even,
I would call it evokes.
Yeah. Also, I just wanted to add, having spoken to Mona in fairly good depth about what she does, a lot of it is rehab after injury. And I was thinking, you're in Sarasota, which is an older community. And this looks more like young peak performance rather than enriching what you have.
Yes. Good point. Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
I ended up, I am a therapist at the Florida Integrated Medical Center, a holistic center, because
look at
I needed to do something. I needed a position after my husband died. And I'm working with older people just at the clinic and all of that. But, and I love that. But actually the patent is really how the mind and body engages in, in up in
Yeah.
changing your performance, how you move your actual body parts and mind. How you
So I think it's really interesting listening to all of this, that as you're having a conversation with Dee and Phyllis chiming in, and as they're getting you to talk, Mona, the theme of what you do, at least from my perspective, is getting clearer and clearer. And I can see how that clarity of theme could be built into your visual presentation much more clearly.
Okay.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, Mona, I would get a different headshot, one that's not, I mean, you look beautiful in this picture, I should say, but outdoor. Now think about where we are too right now with COVID, right? So being sensitive to like that, because that's the other thing that I was going to say right when I read your statement about what happens if you haven't given any thought to it, what do you do now? A brand is always in evolution. And so, you know, like headshots can be selfies that can change every few weeks if you want to. I mean, a lot of like, I come across websites all the time that are very sophisticated looking, clearly are doing very well. And then the person who runs the website is like, it's a current photo, but maybe it's a selfie. Maybe it's not super professional, but it's like, it's them. And I think that more and more people are more sensitive to that because of social media, because, you know, we don't really, you know, when we are following people, we see them in the now. So I would maybe consider having like an outdoor shot or doing something with you in motion, or having a picture of you moving, but something that you love, in really great lighting, bright, energetic lighting, and maybe a series of that, because like I showed you with the, I don't have it up anymore, but with Edita's website, Edita, I can't spell her name off the top of my head. You know, she had really great photos. Yes. So we were able to plug that in, and I was able to design around them. And it became more the focal point. So I would like have you up here with a link going right to your story, and then having your about page be the next page that you go after and talk about what it is. And maybe up in here, you know, healthy moving for healthy living. We could go, you know, there's so many different ways to approach it, but it's sort of like taking, you know, if you've ever had a house where you have like, you've made a small adjustment, like my first home, we took down a wall between the living room and the kitchen, and it was just one wall, but it completely transformed the entire feeling and the way the space operated. And I like working like that. So like, I would say like, this is your wall right here, is this about page, and then your home page. And so I would just focus on those two things. And I bet that your website could feel a million times different.
So just one quick question. So with COVID, suddenly I entered the world of being online. I never even thought I could do my work online, but I learned that I could. So I would kind of like to focus working with in the ballet world with dancers online, and then you know, I have in-person clients through the clinic. Yep. So how do I kind of bring? Does that matter? Is that incorporated?
Yeah, that's your services page. That's your services page.
Okay.
So your services page, I did notice that it, well, first of all, if I click on just services, it doesn't go. Like you'd want like a main services page with like, you know, maybe like a statement about how you work, you know, maybe at a high level. And then maybe you have your services broken down below that. But what I notice is that I have to go to each one of these pages, and there's like a little hidden statement down here around sessions and how you work. But I would say like services / approach, and then maybe something that says like work with me, and maybe it's a contact form, and maybe it has like a few little radio buttons or check boxes for how you think you'd like to work together, or what interests you, or whatever. So, but yeah, that would go in here. That would be a retooling of this page, a retooling of this page, and then a retooling of this page. So it seems like a lot because those are 3 out of 5 pages on your website, but there is generally a formula for how to put that together, and it's not anything to be overwhelmed by unless you're trying to DIY it. Like unless you're trying to take down the wall yourself, it's really not that big of a deal.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely wonderful.
Really interesting. Thank
Good.
you.
Thank you. It's fabulous.
Anybody
This
else?
was so helpful.
Questions, comments?
Yeah, so here's my email address.
Yeah, I was going to say, please put
If
it.
you guys want to reach out,
Great.
if anyone, I mean, I'm happy to give a free, 20, 30, 40-minute conversation just if you're thinking about doing something, to generally scope it out and get a sense of what some options are, as like kind of just scratch the surface to retooling everything. Like I really do tailor to the budget and tailor to what your goals are. So feel free to email me there. Yeah.
Great. Anybody else? Questions, comments, observations? Maybe we'll go out of screen sharing for the moment.
Sure.
You're back.
There we go.
There you are. Okay. This is really interesting. See, I find the process of going through the thinking and feeling through the theme and bringing the theme out. And the thing is, I know in my conversations with you, you have to not feel like you're going to be locked in for the rest of your life.
Right.
You just get your theme going and you can always refine it. You can always move it. You can always reshape it. But
yeah,
excuse me. So it's really a very organic flowing process instead of like formulaic and getting locked into an identity for the rest of your life. I know mine is constantly changing in my head and probably will start changing online also one of these days.
Yeah.
Who knows? And part of it is the response you get from your clients or from the field out there after you're working. It's very much I consider an interpersonal relationship.
Yeah. And that's why that's why I spent so much time talking about my truck too, is that, it's our brands evolve as we evolve. And the more comfortable we become just owning our story, like just being how we are, if we meet someone or we chat with someone, we connect, like my goal is to have a brand, any kind of part of my experience of me be completely authentic to who I am in that moment. And that moment may change the next day, whether I'm outside doing the skating rink or driving around picking up lumber or designing something or consulting someone. It's just, the goal is to just always come from a place of truth in me. And I think that's the foundation of a brand that can evolve.
I think that the fascinating challenge about that is how to balance bringing your true authenticity out and yet still not muddy your core message. Like I was joking about the hula duck avatar. That's actually been part of my personality. Right now, that's not appropriate. But if you know me offline, you know it's totally appropriate. Or that I'm a Broadway musical nut. Right now, I'm keeping that out of my work, but that's such a core part of me that I can see down the road as I do more lives and I do more teachings. You can bet I'm going to be referring to songs and song lyrics a lot more because it's so important to me. I have a jukebox in my head, and when I think about situations, all these songs and lyrics come up, and a lot of them are ones that people are not so familiar with. So I guess part of what I'm saying is I'm aware that it's an evolving process and that there's all this stuff that's completely authentic, but it doesn't mean it has to all be put out there right now. It has to be coherent and it has to be an evolving process also. Would you say so? Would you agree?
Coherent for sure.
What was that, Jean?
Has to be coherent for sure. I don't know how You can
I think it definitely
little.
has to be coherent. Yeah. And I think that it gets more coherent with practice. I used to get really insecure whenever I would talk to my neighbor, Bobby, who is like the builder in the neighborhood. And he helped me build my chicken coop back a few years ago. And I used to feel this like insecurity around him. Like I felt like an imposter, like in the presence of someone who knew how to build and who was like the dad, you know, and he would always ask me questions because I'm married to a woman. And so he would always be like, well, who's the disciplinarian and who does the laundry and who does the bed? Just like, And over time, I got more comfortable just meeting those that, you know, the quizzical,
Curiosity.
the curious, yeah, and even the, you know, the judgments, you know, and I think that like being more open and available to receiving that and feeling it has allowed me to be more coherent in how I come out. Because if you're always coming from a place of insecurity, at least for me, if I'm coming from a place of insecurity, I'm just like half of the conversation's going on in my head and then half of it's coming out in these weird spurts that make no sense to someone else. So yeah, I mean, to be a little contrarian, Leslie, I would say like I'm always for putting it out there, like not holding it back and just letting what comes back come back. And the thing is we can always adjust. And when it comes to social media, like that stuff is gone from someone's feed the moment they swipe past it anyway. So no one's looking at anything for longer than a few minutes at a time. If you make mistakes or you seem incoherent and you notice it, just do it differently next time if you want to. Yeah.
Well, this has been great. Anybody? Any other questions, comments? Anybody else want feedback on something?
Yeah.
So I had a conversation last week with somebody, and I'm not even sure I remember who it was. I know, it was a new executive director for the Virginia Department of Specialty Foods. Anyway, she runs several organizations, and I don't know how we got on the subject, but we were talking about, you know, people not dressing professionally, and she came up with this, you know, scenario where she had gone on an appointment with this other woman, and the woman was like really all sexed up, you know, and you know, they met in the parking lot, and she was like, oh man, you know, what's up with this? And they went in, and you know, she had, you know, like was a little low cut in the back or whatever, and she made sure that the buyer got a hug and all this. And then when they left, she totally acknowledged it, and she said, you know, I always get a better order out of that guy when he gets a little skin. You know, and that's the grocery industry, the old-fashioned way. I mean, not so much now, but at the time, you know, it was. Yeah. I mean, I had a woman who called on me when I was in my 20s, and I'm in my 60s now, and she would come in with these fabulous hats and these lacy dresses, and I'm like, this is not afternoon tea, honey, we're working here, you know. So the dressing is also your personal brand. I think you know, that you made a really good point with Mona, that, you know, I want to see Mona in her workout clothes. If she's going to be helping me get movement, I want to see her stretched out and showing me that she can move. I don't want this, you know, headshot of, you know, this professional. You look like a psychiatrist in that, you know, or somebody very, you know, somebody you want to trust, right? Which, of course, you want to trust the person with your body, but you also want to know that they follow what they teach, and so you have to be expansive with that, I think.
Yeah, that's great feedback. That's the whole how to dress, and I mean, yeah, for sure, like to the point with Mona, I think for sure. I mean, yeah, I'd love to see either Mona in her workout gear or in the gear that she dresses in when she works with somebody, or just in her element. I just want to see her. Yeah, I mean, I definitely am a bit of a rebel when it comes to, if I know there's an expectation of me, I like to push it. I like to, you know, try something a little bit different, because that's also me. that's what part of what makes me good at what I do, is that I'm often looking for that point of what's going to change someone's mind, or what's going to challenge someone's opinion that they have already established. And that's just really fun. And it's just how I live my life as well. I mean, I have 3 daughters. They're watching me all the time. They love that I'm building this skating rink, which is, I mean, I'm just like giving myself pep talks to get it done. I sure hope it holds the water. But
you should all know that she's using a lot of the paint cream that her parents' company makes, and it really works, because I've tried it.
Yeah, it does. It's really working. And I don't normally strain myself the way I have been, but I got in bed last night and the whole room smelled like menthol. And the kids this morning got in bed and they were like, "Ooh, still smells like mint." And I was like, "Yes, it's working."
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that it's okay to be a little bit messy and a little bit fringe. And I love that. I like working with people who are not super buttoned up. I think that makes me trust them more.
That's much more acceptable now than it used to be. And I think for many of us in this group, we're used to the older, more formal, button down, official presentation.
Yeah.
Right? It's a bit of a mental and emotional leap to be able to let go and relax and just be a little bit more out there. And actually it's a lot more fun, but you got to get past the gateway in your head of 30 years of life experience, which says grow up, put on the suit, behave yourself, have the formal headshot and all that. And it is changing. So it's an evolutionary process.
Yeah, I mean, I help people make money, so they want to know that I'm serious, a serious person, so, but when we meet at a trade show and we go out afterwards for a drink, or, we go to the comedy club or something, you're like, who knew you were so much fun?
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm sorry, I have to hold back on that sometimes, but
it's a fine line, especially like the whole making of money thing. I was actually thinking about that. I had a lot of fun thinking about this today, because I thought to myself, well, my financial advisor or my accountant, like I would expect them to be really buttoned up, but then I was like, well, or do I just want to know that, like, to see their work and know and listen to them speak and read their white paper? Like, there's so much more now, to Leslie's point, that we have access to be able to make a judgment on whether or not someone's competent or qualified than what used to be the only way, which was shiny shoes and a nice tie or
and a good printed flyer.
That's right.
Faxed or mailed.
But now, now it's like, you can write a post in Facebook and establish yourself. You can, there's so many different ways.
Jean says in the comment, personal branding is all about grabbing the brand you have, what others say about you, and managing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Talk more about the what others say about you part.
Well, that's what this, I mean, it said, I taught personal branding to corporate employees about their personal brand that the company paid me to do. And talk about, you have a brand. It's what others already say about you behind your back. It's a process of managing that. And it's everything. It's clothing, it's color, it's your website. It's you wear scarves. For example, we have a realtor in town in Sarasota is always known for, wearing her scarf.
The mark. Yeah, sure.
Michael Saunders. Yeah. And that's her little trademark.
That's her thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's her thing. And it could be that I use, a pink pen or something. People do tell me you wear a lot of pink. So that is something that, people know me as, and that kind of a thing. So it's the whole package of what you're writing, what you appear in print, and talking and packaging of how you look and so forth. So it is a package, but it was a famous saying of, I just forgot who said that, but you already have a brand and it's what people, describe you and think about you. It's a matter of grabbing that and saying, I either want to hone it or I want to clean it up or whatever.
Yeah. Or maybe, if it's not true to you, then you want to examine that. If it is true to you and you're comfortable with it, then more of that.
You want to enhance it. Yes.
Yeah.
I think what JJ is saying is that we come off a certain way and people judge us for that, you know, whether they're looking at our Facebook pages or the way we show up in a meeting or the way we go, you know, come in the morning and go right to the coffee machine or whatever it is. And all those little things add up to, you know, she's stuck up, or she's, you know, aloof, or she's fun loving, or, you know, whatever it is. And then in a corporate setting, it's like, well, is that serving you? You know, are you showing up? Those are all things that are you, but are you showing up in a way that helps your career or helps you to get other people enlisted? If you're always talking about your fun weekend, and then you're trying to corral everybody in a committee meeting, they might not think you're serious. You know, so I think that's what you're saying more than, you know, what we're talking about as solo entrepreneurs, where, you know, we're
well, yeah, in corporate setting, there's a whole other dynamic, a whole other political arena in corporate. There is, you know, you're definitely have more eyes on you. I know for me, when I stepped foot in the factory, in my parents' factory, as the daughter of the founders and as someone, I actually remotely manage the communications and marketing and sales teams. So when I show up and I'm young, I'm the kid of the owner, like I know that there's already judgments coming at me that I have to overcome just by my presence.
Right.
So like, you know, there's already, she's, you know, they've got 2 brothers, and, you know, it's like, it's being aware of how you're being perceived. And in my mind, it's being aware of that and then just standing a little taller in the same shoes that you're already in.
Yeah, I was going to say being aware of it, but also keep your center. You don't want to try and mold yourself to people's perceptions. You need to be aware of them so you can be responsive and attentive, but from your center. So that your center. Steve, this has been terrific. I really appreciate your, Marky's giving you a thumbs up.
Yay.
Her, email again, it's d@heffernan.com. Her Facebook group is Innovate Your Brand. Please feel free to join. This has been great. I hope you all found it useful. And Dee, I just want to thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Do you use Facebook more than LinkedIn, or do you have a LinkedIn presence as well?
I do have a LinkedIn presence. I don't use it a ton right now, but I do keep it current.
But I'm curious, because if you're working mostly with business people,
most of my clients are on LinkedIn. But I was telling my wife this morning. I had to join a Facebook group for my ice rink because I really needed the support. And there's like 20,000 people in this group, and one of the my entire Facebook feed right now.
I get that in the car thing. I mean, I'm looking to my next car will be an electric car. So that. Yeah. So but what I'm saying is that, you know, if we're going to interact with you, you want us to interact with you on Innovate Your Brand rather than on LinkedIn.
You can interact with me through LinkedIn. You can join the group. You don't have to. You can just email me or call me.
Yeah, I'm asking your professional opinion.
Just email her directly.
You're talking about branding, and
yeah. I don't think it matters.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't think it matters.
I kind of ignore. I have a Facebook page just so I can send people, if they want to be my friend, you know, on Facebook, and they're a business associate, but I don't use it.
How you interact with people.
Give you a little bit of context. For sure. The part of the mastery program, and part of the emphasis is in using Facebook groups in addition to other things to build your business. And it does work when you follow the formula. So part of what we're doing is adding that to the usual armamentarium of LinkedIn and all that. So really contact Dee by email, by website, by LinkedIn, by Facebook group. Point is she's accessible.
But just to that point, I think it's a really interesting point that you bring up, because I think it's a question a lot of people, I mean, I have had it myself, like, well, you know, depending on how much time I want to dedicate to this group, like, what's my model for using, what's my model for monetizing it? You know, some of my customers come through Facebook. Some of my clients come from, a lot of them come from referrals, especially the higher, the corporate ones. You know, they're usually referred from one CEO to another. But they're just what I see Facebook for me anymore and LinkedIn is, do I have some kind of footprint? Can they look at one page and look at the other page and look at the other page and see consistency? Can they see that I'm active, reasonably active? Can they see that I generally am updated in my brand, whatever my brand is? And I just try to, at this point, I just try to keep it maintained. But the reason I brought up the group was that, interestingly, I had people join my Innovate Your Brand group from engaging with them in a group that had absolutely nothing to do with business. But there's business owners who build backyard rinks. There's business owners who own, pickup trucks, who also have a love for DIY, which is why I bought it. And also because I love it. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it really matters, to be honest. I just think what matters is to have, if someone were to Google your name or to find you on Facebook, that they can see that you're being intentional about what you're putting out there, regardless of whatever it is. Just that it's intentional and current.
Well, thank you again, Dee. I really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for being here.
Thank you.